Hey guys, welcome to week 11 Power Rankings. It is the Christmas Eve edition, and I'll get us started with pick 32. The Chicago Blackhawks.
Ooh, okay. New 32.
Yeah, new 32. Honestly, it could have gone a different way as well. I see you've done the same one. I did have another team that'll be my 31 anyway, might be yours as well. But yeah, no, not great. And I think if they had won today, they definitely wouldn't have been 32. But giving up a 5-2 lead, and considering 5 straight goals in the last 12 minutes of the third or whatever it was, just yeah, not great. Um, the Michigan goal by Bedard, great. The rest of it, not so great. So yeah, 32nd,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, tough week at the start. Vancouver, Colorado. They beat Colorado. Then Montreal, St. Louis. But obviously St. Louis being on a back-to-back, so it's a bit harder there. But good win out of the 1-4 games. On to 31, I have San Jose. Sliding
Yeah,
back down.
they were my potential 32.
Yeah,
I reckon I had them.
I was almost
Yeah.
there, but I've been a bit lower on Chicago for a lot longer, and look, San Jose's week was very difficult, probably one of the hardest of the weeks. Starting off with Colorado, LA, Arizona, then Vancouver. So three basically top 10 teams and a top 16 team most likely, or at least bordering. So they didn't perform very well against them, to be fair, but all top 16 teams essentially. Tough week.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think, as I said, like if Chicago didn't hand over the lead today and they got the they had a 3 goal lead. If they got that game done and dusted, or even taken it to OT, I would have potentially flipped that. But nah, just not good enough from Chicago. San Jose, after looking really promising for about 20 games there, have sort of regressed a little bit as well. But like you said, difficult week. So we'll see how they bounce back after the Christmas break. All right, 30 for me. I've got the Anaheim Ducks. Um,
Yes.
Finally ending their slide with a couple of good wins to start the week. 5-1 win against the New Jersey Devils, and then a 4-3 win against the Detroit Red Wings on the back-to-back. Very strange. Plays the New Jersey Devils, who were on a back-to-back when they weren't, and then play the Detroit Red Wings, who aren't on a back-to-back whilst they are. Again, it's been a thing all year, but it's just insane how many times that seems to happen. I get shocked when I see two teams that are both on a back to back. It just doesn't seem to ever happen. But yeah, and then it sort of fell away a little bit, getting blanked by the Calgary Flames and the 3-2 loss against Seattle Kraken today, which, they played quite well. Probably a little bit unfortunate not to even get a point in that game ultimately, but it is what it is. So yeah, good week from them, but unfortunately I
Yeah.
wasn't I wasn't going any higher on them.
Like I know they beat New Jersey, and that probably looks like the better win, but I honestly rate the Detroit win better just because it's on the back-to-back.
Yeah.
And I know basically New Jersey is just bad goaltending, so you can get a win out of nowhere with against them. So very impressed at the start, but as you said, it fell off at the end. Number 29, Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah, they're my 28.
Yeah, I figured as such. They had really good 9-4 win against Buffalo. Then they go and OT lose to Washington and lose 1-4 to Toronto. So honestly, overall, really pretty good week. Or at least average, but difficult teams to come up against. Obviously, besides Buffalo, and yeah, probably got as maximum points for the week that you could expect for them.
Yeah, I mean, look, absolutely monstrous win, that 9-4 win, obviously at Buffalo as well, which was monstrous. But yeah, look, to go 500 for the Jackets, it's it's not what they need to get their season back into something, but it's the minimum for them. I think good win. At least they went 500, but yeah, if they want to make anything of their season, they've got to be 500 plus. They can have a poor week at 500, but everything else from here has got to be well and truly above it. You can't be going 500 every week, otherwise their season's done, which it probably is. But
Mm.
I've seen glimpses of them. I've said it all year. They seem to play well, but they just can't hold leads. So yeah, I don't think they're gonna. I think their season is done, and we're not going to see a massive turnaround. But it's a team that if they did get on a run, it wouldn't surprise me given how well they've played
Yeah.
through parts of the season.
My prediction for him is they'll do a Vancouver of last year. They'll sit near the bottom, and then right at the end of the season, they'll go on a run where it all clicks. That's
Yeah.
my prediction.
All right. Let's see if that comes true. Hey. All right. 29 for me is the Buffalo Sabres. So they're staying where they are. They didn't do enough for me. They just, yeah. I mean, they went 1-2. They beat that. Sorry, they got absolutely smoked by Columbus, as we just mentioned, 4-9, and then 2 days later they smashed the Toronto Maple Leafs 9-3. So you take away the Columbus loss, their week looks really, really good all of a sudden. Because then they obviously get the OT loss against the Rangers. They go, three. They would have gone 3 from their last 4 points. With that massive win against Toronto and a really difficult OT loss against, one of the best, probably at least top 3, if not the best team in the league at the moment. So yeah, really great until you look at the Columbus Blue Jackets. So, but again, they burnt me all season. I'm not comfortable with them. They go and do what they did against Toronto, play really, really well against New York, but then they have a game like they did against Columbus. You just can't
Yeah.
make out what this team's going to be, and it's super frustrating right now. We're not Buffalo fans, and we're finding it frustrating. I could only imagine how frustrated the Buffalo fans are. But yeah, they stay where they are for me, and they go down 1 for you until they do something else.
Yeah, well, they go down 1. Honestly, it was a really good week though. All things beating Toronto and then going basically drawing against the Rangers. That's a seriously good week, and I think they got
Brilliant last two.
and
Brilliant last two games.
yeah, and I think they
Honestly.
got an extra 3 wins in the same games against Columbus. So that's why, did the same thing as you. I was tossing and turning, but those are the reasons there. It was just the quality of opponents this week, plus the more wins against Columbus's side. On to 27 for me. I have the Ottawa Senators, probably my
Yeah,
most disappointing team of the year.
it's between them and Buffalo, that's for sure.
So look, they had a pretty difficult week as well. They start off against Vegas, lose. Go to versus Arizona, lose. They go against Colorado, lose, and then they versus Pittsburgh, go to OT and win it in OT. So ending it good, but just conceding way too many goals. I think the least they conceded this week was 4. Uh, and yeah, I'm right. And they conceded up to 6, and that's just the problem there. Too many goals conceded.
Yeah, exactly. They've got the firepower. They know how to score goals, but the problem is, and it was the same way last year, is that their defense and their goaltending is just not good enough. They conceded 20 goals in the 4 games, but they also scored 15 in the 4 games. So, they put plenty of goals on the board to give them a chance, but their defense and their goaltending just can't hold it together long enough. So, yeah, unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be another wasted season for Ottawa and their fans after they were so like the city was buzzing. Ottawa,
Yeah,
Ottawa were
new
buzzing. They were
ownership and
ready.
everything. Yeah,
Oh, 100%. And yeah, to see what they've produced so far this season, it's really disappointing for that fan base because I was one of those people. I was on the Ottawa train. I thought they were good to take off this season. And I think they've disappointed everyone. So yeah, unfortunate, but we move on. At 27, I have the Seattle Kraken.
all right.
Yeah, we're seeing some better play from them at the moment. Slightly. I won't go too crazy with them, but Their games against the LA Kings last week, and then obviously this week as well. But 3-4 OT loss to Dallas, 2-1 win against the Kings. They get the win this time, unlike last week. And then they 3-2 win against the Anaheim Ducks. So, two really difficult opponents to start the week, and they, obviously get the OT loss and the win, and then they close out against the Ducks as they probably should. So, yeah, they had to move up the rankings for me, but I'm very wary of this team considering they still are one of the lower teams in the league in terms of amount of wins. And they have played a few more games than a few other teams around them. So it's really those OT losses that are holding them up a little higher than they are. But better play from them, that's for sure.
Yeah. I guess the thing, like they've got 9 OT points. They do have the 12 wins. Honestly, they beat two, or at least draw against Dallas and beat LA, two very good teams, two top 10 teams, and then get the job done against Anaheim. So honestly, very impressed for the week. That's why they had to move up, and Ottawa and the rest just haven't impressed me. So that's why they skip ahead a bit. On to 25 for me, Calgary Flames.
One spot above for me at 24.
Yeah, we're just doing a lot of flip flopping. Um, I think this probably starts the run of, or maybe of just all these teams having like 2-1 weeks. But
Yep.
so they start off, they beat Florida, they beat Anaheim 3-0, and then they come against LA. They take it to LA, but then they lose against LA. So a really, really strong week. They moved down one purely just because everyone else in this lower middle bracket just had similar or better weeks, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, 100%. That was pretty much why they stayed pretty stagnant for me. 2-1. Their loss was against the Kings, who, it's an honourable loss. I know don't really like talking about honourable losses, but if you're going to lose to anyone, at least lose to a top-notch team. It's better than losing to the low end. But yeah, it was the same for me. I just couldn't move them because of how well every single team above them had played. So
Mm.
yeah. All right. 25 for me. I've got the Montreal Canadiens.
Yep, just a little flip flopping.
Yeah, it was I probably like I did consider whether or not to do what you did and had Montreal
Oh,
first,
it was
but
extremely close, extremely close.
yeah, it was yeah, they get a good win against Winnipeg in OT um at the end of the day. An OT loss against a really in-form Minnesota Wild, and then they beat Chicago on the back-to-back, which given the back-to-back is a really good result for them. So really good week to only move up one spot. But in context, you're looking at the next lot of teams, like even from last week, if you look at Tampa, for me, Tampa Wild, Blues, Pens, they all went 2-1.
Mm.
So so they all had pretty good weeks as well. Tampa actually went 3-0. So yeah, it's really hard to sort of move, especially when everyone around them is performing, pretty much just as well as them, if not slightly better. So, and they're probably stronger teams as well in you know,
Mm.
at the end of the day. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I just couldn't move them. That's where they had to
yeah.
stay. But
I
still
almost didn't
really
move on the two. It was only really just small factors that made me make
good.
that change, but you could go either way. On to 23, I have falling down a bit. It's the Detroit Red Wings.
You did it too. Far out.
This is one of the ones I was waiting to see how big you went. But yeah, it's actually
I was
crazy to
waiting
see
for it.
them this low, considering
Oh,
how they started the season. And
mm-hmm.
it's yeah, it's becoming shambles. So they started off losing to Anaheim. They lose to the Jets. They shootout win against Philly, but concede 6 goals. And then on the back to back, they lose to New Jersey 3-2 in regulation.
Don't forget, in that Philly game, they led 5-1. They
Mm.
had gave up another 4-goal lead. It's not the first time they've done it this year. I just,
Yeah.
oh,
So I think a lot of these games, honestly, pretty excusable besides the Anaheim game for me. and that's what's really made me move hard on them, is because they've been below average for probably 3-4 weeks now. And now that Philly game plus the Anaheim game, it's that's what concerns me, because you can get away with losing to the Jets and losing on a back to back. I can forgive that, but it was just those two scenarios that I just can't forgive.
Yeah, well, look, they're 2-7-1 in their last 10 as well.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
It's not good. And they've played some decent sides, but also they've lost to the Sharks, the Sens, the Ducks, as you just mentioned. Um, and the Ducks were on a back-to-back as well.
Hmm.
Like, that's the other thing that you've got to remember. The Ducks were on a back-to-back, and the Ducks were 4-0 up against them. So yeah, look, it's concerning for them. They were one of the most exciting teams in the league, um, and that's quickly sort of vanishing. They're not as dynamic at the moment. Patrick Kane is actually, he's got 5 goals since he's jumped on board, but their record since he's been a Red Wing and been in the lineup isn't so good. I don't. I'm not definitely not blaming him. It's definitely not on him. It's not his fault. There's just something that's not clicking right now. And yeah, look, hopefully for their sake, they turn it around. Otherwise, Detroit, Buffalo, and Ottawa, the 3 teams we all thought might do something, might be in the same position they found themselves the last few years, not in a playoff spot. All right, let's move on to 22. I feel so bad having them here because they didn't have a poor week, but St. Louis Blues moving down 1 spot at 22.
Yeah, they
Like
moved down
it,
2 for me, and like I said, they didn't have a bad week.
no, it's like, how'd they go? They went Tampa Bay, they lost 6-1. So obviously that's not great start. But then they 4-1 Florida Panthers, get redeem themselves a little bit. Um, and the only goal they conceded was a fluke rebound off of a corner bit of the glass. And then they 7-5 the Chicago Blackhawks today with a 5 goal in the last 12 minutes of the third to come back from 5-2 down. So, you know, a mixed bag, but still a reasonably good week where they pick up 4 points. So, yeah, it's crazy that they moved down a position even though they went 4 from 6. But out of all of the teams above them, probably the least impressive this week.
Yeah, that's just it. The other teams just had slightly better records this week, plus also probably going on runs, and that's the only reason they moved down for me. So basically, you could read this team to a little bit higher. They're all pretty much equal in a sense for me. Going on to 21, moving up a fair bit, it's the Minnesota Wild. This is a
Yeah, I
team.
went
Yeah,
1.
yes.
They're 19 for me.
Yeah, see, this is a team I considered moving hard on, and I debated yes, no, yes, no. They start off the week, Pittsburgh losing. They go against Boston on a back to back. They win that in OT. They OT Montreal and win, and then they go and verse Boston and win. So good week all around, and they've gone on a run at this point, which they did last year as well. They're now 7-3 in their last 10. Won the last 3, obviously, as we just mentioned. So, yeah, they're going on a run. I just had to wait one more week, just purely because the other teams around them had also really good weeks, and I just couldn't warrant pushing them down for Minnesota's run as well.
Yeah, look, I just think they're playing really, really well at the moment. They're in probably better form than a few of those teams around them. I've liked the way they've played. Been consistent as well as of late. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the next couple of weeks, maybe within the first week of the new year, we might even see them in the top 16.
Hmm,
All right. Um, moving on to where's mine? Mine is
20.
21. I have the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Oh, it's my 19. And that's what I was saying. Basically, St. Louis to maybe even 18. It's all pretty much the same.
Yeah, and that's it is tough, and they did have a good week, so it's like similar to St. Louis, moving them down a position. But I just think Minnesota and the team that I have at 20 are currently playing slightly better than the Pittsburgh Penguins, even though they beat the Minnesota Wild to start the week, get a shootout win against the Carolina Hurricanes, and then the OT loss today against the Ottawa Senators. So they take 5 from 6, but ultimately I do think that Minnesota and the team I've got at 20 are in better form than they are at the moment, which is the only reason they moved down a position.
Yeah, no, that's just it. They do outshoot their opponents by 12 this week, and like you said, they beat Minnesota. So obviously, I made the right decision here. I'm kidding. We you could make that argument against Columbus and Buffalo down below,
I was going
vice
to say,
versa.
right?
But no, like I said, there's all very close. Once again, good week, and if they, you got the extra point against Ottawa during overtime, they would have had a perfect week, but it's not to be. Once again, their record, even though it was a decent week, is not good in the last 10, still 4-3-3.
4-3-3.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but yes. On to my 20, maybe your 20. I've got the Tampa Bay Lightning
Yeah, that's
sitting
where
in
I've
the
got
middle.
them as well.
Sitting in the middle, this team's a weird one. They go undefeated this week. They beat St. Louis 6-1. They beat Vegas 5-4 in regulation, and then they beat the Caps in shootout. It's yeah, an interesting team. Probably honestly 3 decent teams to beat there, but I'm still not convinced on them. They obviously got outshot pretty heavily against the Washington game, and granted they only conceded one, but they only scored one. But I don't rate
Hey,
Vegas as highly as other people do. So their week is good, but not as good as probably it should look, if that makes sense.
yeah. Look, I don't know what to make of them either. So yeah, that's why I'm a little bit hesitant. I'm holding back on them. They're 7-3-0 in the last 10, which is pretty good. Their position in the standings is also pretty good, but again, like I don't doubt Tampa's ability. I think they're obviously a championship caliber team. It's just that from what I saw early on in the season, I'm still a little bit hesitant. They might be pulling it together now, but I definitely just waiting on them a little bit, going okay. I don't want to make the call too early. Same with Edmonton. We took a long time to get them up the list. I mean, I think even last week they were only 18, Edmonton, and people were starting to put them in their top 16s, or they were being spoken about as a top 16 team back in the playoff hunt, sort of thing. So, I'm similar with Tampa. I
Which is
just,
funny because they're only 500, being Edmonton.
oh, I know,
Which
right?
is actually quite funny when you think about it. But yeah,
But exactly right, and we're talking about 14th placed Tampa Bay Lightning that
yep,
are 4 wins above 500. But yeah, I just again, I think I'm just not completely sold on them. I think if they go on a bit more of a run and show a more consistent approach, then yeah, I probably will.
yep,
And you'll see them climb the rankings quickly. All right, it's is it me? Yeah,
yep.
it's me.
18U.
All right, 18. Actually, I don't think I need to look at this. Carolina Hurricanes.
Oh, okay. They're my 16, though I definitely thought about having him that low.
I just can't look. 3-4-3 in the last 10. They haven't been overly great at all. Yeah, I don't know. Like, don't get me wrong, tough week. They lose 4-5. Sorry, I'll go from the start. They lose 1-2 in shootout to Washington. So, basically a draw. They beat Vegas 6-3. They lose in shootout again 2-1 to Pittsburgh. And then they lose 4-5 to New York Islanders. So ultimately, a pretty tough week. They take what even though they only win one game, they still take 4 out of 8 points. But yeah, look, to me, I'm just not sure about them still. Like
Yeah. Look,
they
I'm
don't impress me. Their defense is questionable. Their goaltending situation's abysmal. Yeah, to me, they're not a top 16 side yet.
Yeah, look, I'm the same. It's just I think they're being playing well on ice and they're being very competitive against all teams at this point. Obviously, shootout against Washington, beating Vegas, really good teams to take it to. Then they took it to Pittsburgh, and then they honestly took it to Islanders, and a little bit unfortunate probably to lose that one. So I think the record looks worse than probably how good their week is. With those shootout losses, they could honestly, if they turn into wins, they get 6 out of 8 points, and it looks really good. So that's just how it played out. But moving on to my 18, New Jersey Devils.
Yeah, they're just one spot above, and they're a pretty similar story to Carolina. I just think their record's been a little bit better of late. But yeah,
Yeah,
still.
I'm not sold on this team. I'm more sold on Carolina. Honestly, I think New Jersey's got a lot of problems.
I'm not
Even
sold on either of them.
Nah, well, I'm not sold on either of them, no. But they start off the week, Anaheim losing 5-1. That obviously on the back to back, and then OT loss to Philly. They lose in regulation 6-3 to Edmonton, and then they beat the Red Wings today 3-2. Honestly, they like you showed me today, their defense stats are equal, if not better, than last year, but they are letting in way more goals purely because their goaltending sucks. Save percentage wise, I think 59th and 72nd ranked in the league. That's how poor both their goaltenders are. Compare that to someone like Pittsburgh, who has 3 goaltenders, like over .91 save percentage. um, so yeah, this team is just got one big area that needs to be fixed, and they haven't done it yet. So they're going to keep honestly sliding at this point if they don't fix that.
Yeah, look, I tell you right now, it's Christmas and Fitzy and what is it, Fitzgerald and the New Jersey Devils wish list is 100% give me a goaltender. And I believe that's the same as Carolina Hurricanes. They're in the same position. Give me a goaltender. Because it is probably the one thing holding both of those teams back right now. I know Carolina's defense has been abysmal this year compared to recent years. Um, but yeah, their goaltending's just as atrocious. And yeah, you just think if both of those teams had a goaltending that they could trust, they'd probably be climbing the Metro and back inside that top three in no time. So, yeah, look, I don't know what else to say about this team. It's just disappointing to see the Devils and the Hurricanes at this point in the season so far down when they were two of the most fun teams to watch last year. You know, Carolina's defense was just insanely good. The Devils' offensive prow was just fantastic, and now they're both struggling to even be playoff teams. So disappointing.
Alrighty.
It's my number 16, and this I'm assuming it's this team that's sitting out of yours. It's the Edmonton Oilers.
Yes.
Yeah, still not completely sold on these guys, but they're kind of making it hard not to be, in a sense. 7-3-0 still, and you know their record this week was 2-1. They get a 1-3 loss against the Islanders to start the week. But the Islanders can do that to you, especially when you get ridiculously good goaltending from them. And then they go and beat the New Jersey Devils 6-3 after scoring 4 goals in really quick fashion in the third period to come from behind, and then doing the exact same thing against the New York Rangers a day later on the back to back. And winning that game 4-3. I saw a bunch of memes come out about because what was it? It was the Mika Zibanejad back one touch pass to Wheeler, and Wheeler's facial expression, and all these Rangers fans were talking about how good it was, and your face when Jonathan Quick is absolutely on fire at the end of the second period. And then I checked the scores like 5 minutes later, and they were 4-1 down, and I was like, well, that didn't age well. But that's just what the Oilers can do because they did it the exact same thing the night before. They were 3-2 down against the Devils and click, and they were 6-3 up and the game was over.
Mm.
Before you could even blink in both of those games, you blinked, you could have gone away for a coffee and come back, and boom, game over. And you're like, what happened? Like, what happened? But that's just the potency of the Edmonton Oilers. If they could only have a better defense and better goaltending, they'd probably be cup favourites, to be brutally honest with you. But yeah, unfortunately, those two areas are lacking, and yeah, at the moment they are on their way back to being a playoff team, though.
Alrighty, number 15, I have the Arizona Coyotes, moving up 2 positions for me.
They're at 14 for me.
So they start off, they beat Ottawa, they beat San Jose, then they lose to Colorado. They don't move up further for me in my power rankings purely because of the ease of the teams they've beaten, 2 bottom 6 teams, and then obviously losing, even though they took it to them in Colorado. And I think that's what I like about Arizona is they seem to take it to every team. They're probably one of the most consistent teams I've seen in that regard. Uh, Strangely enough, and yeah, that's why they're in my top 16.
Yeah, yeah, it's actually they've been in or teetering around my top 16 for quite some time now, and yeah, they'll stay there for a bit longer because that's exactly the thing. They're in every game. They're giving themselves the best chance, and yeah, the results are sort of going their way. They still have some work to do if they want to be in the playoffs, but yeah, not too bad from them so far. All right, 15 for me. I've got the New York Islanders. Again, another team I can't work out.
I'm a bit
Um,
higher in there.
at 13, yeah. Look, good week from them. They beat the Oilers 3-1. They lose to the Capitals the next day on the back-to-back 2-3 in OT, and then they beat the Carolina Hurricanes 5-4. Um, yeah, look, it's a team that just keeps getting results. I keep expecting this team to regress and just fall back because you look at their record, they're 16 and 17 in terms of win-loss, but 9 of those are in OT. It's one of the things you look 6-1-3, so 6-4 in their last 10, but they're 6-1-3. So most of their losses, they're pushing it to OT to at least
Yeah.
take the point.
Well, that's why I
Um,
rate this team is like we just mentioned with Arizona, they're always taking it to their opponent. But majority of the time they're actually getting the result, which is good.
Yeah, and look, at the moment they're well on track for playoffs and all the rest of it. My big question is are they going to continue this form? If the Devils in Carolina can find old like form of old, um, I can see the Islanders being the one that push down. But at the same time, I also think that Washington are going to regress as well. Philadelphia, I think, will as well at some point, but it's going to be dependent on some players from there. But yeah, the Islanders are the ones that I could see being that wild card at the end. The ones that just, I reckon they'll probably end up with 20 OT points.
Well, your math's
And
not wrong if they keep the average going. Yep.
look, yeah, exactly. 20 OT points, and they end up losing more games than they win, but they end up in the playoffs. So, yeah, look, it's interesting, but as we said, they give themselves a chance every single game, and that's all you need to do, really.
All right. Moving on to my number 14, the Nashville Predators. Just moving down
They're
the
my
one for me.
12.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they're my 12. I didn't punish them this week, honestly.
You promoted
And
them for a bad week in a sense.
well,
Ye-
why did they? Oh, because the Devils. Yeah, I
yeah.
didn't move on them. I just moved on the Devils. I was like, I didn't move them up, but the Devils. Yeah.
Well, they lose to
Uh,
Vancouver, they beat Philly, and then they lose to Dallas, getting outshot pretty heavily there, but only losing by a goal. That's another thing. This team, we could probably say that for the rest of these teams now, always in it, always taking it to them, and it was just the results. Obviously, hard week, 3 top 16 teams easily, and that is the hard part. And I just think they're pretty much like the Islanders and Coyotes at the moment, where they're always taking it to them. Just sometimes they don't get the results, but very hard week and probably the best result you could ask for in some sense.
Look, 7-3-0 in the last 10, and two
10
of those
yes.
losses this week about against Dallas and Winnipeg. So yeah, it's why I wasn't gonna be too harsh on them, because they win those games and they're 9-1-0, or win one of them and they're 8-2-0, and they win those games. So yeah, look, I'm liking what they're doing. They had to stay there for me, but all right. I'll move on to 13. I've got the Washington Capitals.
Yeah, it's my 12.
Weird week, right? Weird week. What was it? I think every game went to overtime, and they played 4 games.
Um,
Um,
I don't think the
yeah,
oh yeah,
no,
the
no, the
Islanders
Islanders
ones,
did.
yeah.
Yep, yep. So Carolina Hurricanes beat 2-1 in shootout. Um, They go 3-2 in overtime against the New York Islanders, and then on the back-to-back, they beat the Columbus Blue Jackets 3-2 in overtime, and then they lose 1-2 in shootout to Tampa Bay. So 4 overtime games, and they end up taking 7 of 8 points. So another fantastic week for the Washington Capitals, but I mean, I just I don't know. I don't think this team is as good as what they're showing, but they're another team that just seems to be getting results and just seems to be giving them a chance to be in every single game. They don't play the prettiest hockey. They don't play, very all that skillful hockey, but they're in every single game and then they just manage to get results. Like it's fascinating to watch at the moment. But
Mm.
hey, there's a lot more talented teams below them that are much lower than them and struggling in the rankings. Sorry, in the standings. So doesn't just because you're skillful and talented doesn't mean you're going to be winning games left, right, and center. So, and they're proving that. They're proving that it's grit and keeping yourself in games that get you the results. So, they have to be
Alright.
up there.
Alrighty, number 11, Vegas going to Knights, moving out of the top 10. I made the move. I'm just not sold on this team, and then they had a pretty bad week. They face Ottawa, win that one. Then the losing begins. Lose to Carolina, 6-3. Lose to Tampa, 5-4, and then lose to Florida, 4-2, and get outshot fairly significantly in that game there. I'm not sold on this team. They seem to feed off the lower end teams. They come up against a couple decent teams and a couple mid teams, and they don't get the results. And that's what I always was going to start expecting. That's why I'm moving hard on them, even though they're what I think they're what third in the standings, but they're like seventh in point percentage because they just played that many games. So yeah, I think their points are also inflated purely because the easier schedule, and that's why they're at my top 10.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you on all of those points. We said it last week. This week would be the test with those 3 more difficult games, and they lost all 3 of them. So they fall down the rankings for us. Still a playoff side, but I definitely think put these guys in a different, if you put these guys in the East, I don't think they're as good as what their record shows. And I think their record wouldn't be anywhere near as good as what it currently is if they were in the East.
Mm.
All right, moving on to number 10, I've got the Philadelphia Flyers staying right where they are in number 10.
Ooh, I moved on them. I got them at 9.
Okay, interesting call considering they went 1 and 2, but sure. Um,
It's
no,
not just the results; it's how you do it.
no shade, no shade. 3-2 overtime win against the Devils. Nashville Predators 2-4 loss, and then on the back-to-back a 6-7 loss, shootout loss against Detroit Red Wings, even though it had a ridiculously impressive comeback, which saw them come back from a 5-1 deficit to a 6-5 lead to only cough up that lead and go into overtime and ultimately shootout and lose. So yeah, look, still took 3 points on the week. It's why I didn't punish them. Reasonably difficult in terms of opponents. Devils are pretty solid. team still, even though they are struggling and you can capitalize on goaltending, they are still a difficult team to play. Nashville are really, really good, and Detroit, even though they're on a sort of slide, they were on a back-to-back. So yeah, ultimately still a reasonable week, but yeah, that's why they stayed where they were for me.
Yeah, well, they promote too. I think they're just more consistent. The team that are number 10 here, who's been on a bit of a slide, Florida Panthers, for me. I think they're just
They're
starting.
my number 9.
I think they're just starting to slide a bit. And look, they started off the week. They lose to Calgary, they lose to St. Louis, and then they beat Vegas. So they get 2 out of 6 points, beating Vegas, losing to two bottom end teams. I think they're just on the start of a slide. It's they're not performing bad on ice against them, but it's always been a thing with Florida. You got to get the results as well, and this week they didn't, and it's just starting to fall back a little bit for me. And I just think Philly's always more consistent, and that's why it wasn't really Philly moving up. It's just Vegas and Florida falling, moving down.
All right, at number 8, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs. Um, Honestly, after that embarrassing loss, some Leafs fans probably want me to have them at 32, and I don't blame you. Look, their week was interesting. They lose 5-2 to the New York Rangers, which, it's the Rangers, so you can see that. They lose 9-3 to the Buffalo Sabres, the team that had just gotten smacked 9-4. So absolutely terrible. It sent the Toronto fan base into a frenzy, but then they come back and beat the Columbus Blue Jackets 4-1 today to, salvage something of this week. But ultimately, that is just an abysmal performance from what is a playoff team. Yeah, conceding 9 goals, just not good. Buffalo, I could see, conceding 9 goals because it's Buffalo and their goaltending sucks. Toronto's goaltending is not much better, but they're also a much better team than Buffalo.
I think Woe's been good, hasn't he? Or am I wrong on that one? I thought Woe's
Wall's
had a
been
decent
alright.
season.
Samsonov's been the issue, and I think they've uh, was it was it Dell?
I
Oh, I can't remember.
can't remember
They,
off the top of my head.
yeah, they've. There's another one that they signed, or is it John? I can't remember. They signed
I'll
another
look
one.
at it right now while you do that. Woe,
Yeah, they
Samsonov,
signed
and
another.
Jones.
Yeah, Jones. Martin Jones is the one. They signed him as well. But Wall's been alright, but there's question marks around the other two, obviously. So,
Well, statistically, Woe's been
um,
really good. Like that's why I brought it up because he's like .916 save percentage, 2.8 goals against average, and same for Martin Jones. It's just Samsonov who's been ordinary.
yeah. So unfortunately, their starter has been quite poor, and look, when you concede 9 goals, it's not good. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
All right, my
move on.
number 8, Boston Bruins. The team moving down a bit, and
Probably would have made that call if Toronto didn't concede 9 goals.
yeah, look, fair play, but at least they got a win.
Yeah.
And look, Boston didn't. They go to OT against Minnesota. Honestly, they were playing good that game, but then they lose 5-1 to Winnipeg. Sure, Winnipeg's in great form, but still. And then on a back-to-back, they lose in regulation 2-3 to Minnesota, who they previously lost to in OT. So I think this team's taken a slide just in performance on ice as well. It's not the team that was at the start of the season. It's why I've moved a bit heavier, even though they get 1 out of 6, and they face up and come swinging Minnesota and obviously in form Winnipeg. But yeah, I need to start seeing some old form to actually start be convinced. Otherwise, they're going to start sliding pretty heavily for me.
Yeah, look, 4-3-3, they're on a little bit of a slide, but again, tough week. Um, and ultimately, outside of that Winnipeg game, they were in both games against Minnesota. Um, Even the games last week that they lost, because I think they're one from their last 6, but the 2 games last week were 2-1 overtime losses. So, even though they're 1 they're 1, 2, and 3 in their last 6. So they're still in just about every single game. The only game they haven't been in the games that they've lost is that Winnipeg game. So and they played quite difficult opponents. Like we're talking, their last 6 has been against Devils, Islanders, Rangers, Wild, Jets, Wild. They're 6 pretty difficult sides to face. So yeah, it's not. Yeah, for me, it's a slide, but I still think they're in a really good position. That they should bounce back.
Alrighty, 6 for
All
you.
right, number 6 for me, I've got the Colorado Avalanche.
Yep, done the same thing.
Yeah, look, and another good week for Colorado. They go 2-1, I think, or 3-1. Sorry. They beat the San Jose Sharks 6-2 at the start of the week, which you expect them to do. They lose 2-3 to Chicago, even though they heavily outshot and outplayed them. Just couldn't get the job done. And then the Ottawa Senators, they beat 6-4. And the Arizona Coyotes today, they beat 4-1. So, 6 from 8 points and a really tight loss to a team they should probably beat, but you have those nights. So, yeah, look, good form by them at the moment. They're, sixth in the standings or something like that. Just they're doing what they need to do ultimately. This is a playoff team that I can't see them not making the playoffs, and realistically all they've got to do is get there, and then we know that they can do what's needed to win it.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. Probably the easiest schedule of the week, and the only thing that concerns me is that blip against Chicago. It's just how much do you read into it? That's basically it. On to
Not
number
much.
5, top 5 here, Dallas Stars.
Yeah.
So they go
One of
from,
the greatest comebacks in history, but yeah, cool.
yeah, well they're averaging around 7. They go from 10 to 5, so average position 7. So they continue the trend. And look, they beat Kraken OT. They beat Vancouver in OT. Then they beat Nashville in regulation 3-2. And I think what concerns me just a little bit is going to OT against Kraken. And the rest is good. Like they played really good against Vancouver, and then played really good against Nashville. So I didn't read into the going to OT against Kraken too much there, even though they got outshot. But Kraken 38 shots to 28 there.
Yeah, but yeah, look, at the end of the day, yeah, look, at a tight week again, but they get all 6 points and one of the greatest comebacks you'll ever see in terms of going from losing a game with 15 seconds to go to winning a game in regulation. So, absolute insanity that. Um, but it just shows you the firepower they've got, and one of the reasons why they've been around, like you said, that 7th position pretty much average all year. They have their little blips, but they're relatively consistent. So, all right, on to number four position. Don't know why I said number fourth, but I've got the LA Kings just sliding off a little bit from what we were seeing. Um,
Yep.
oh, we still got him at number 2. He's
Oh,
quite,
trust me, I sat here on my top 4, and I could
yeah,
have put them in
yeah.
any order, and I was happy with it.
Yeah, look, it's tough, They beat the Sharks 4-1, which they should do. They lose to the Kraken on a back-to-back, which, it's a back-to-back against a team that's not on a back-to-back, but it is the Kraken. They probably should get that done. And then they beat the Calgary Flames 2-1. Sorry, 5-3 for a 2-1 on the week. But yeah, I don't know. They're sliding a little bit. I just sense. Um, and yeah, it just concerned me a little bit. And I think there's a couple of teams that have just overtaken them a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. My number 4, Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, they're my number 3.
I think they're number 1 in the league at the moment. In regards to points, anyway, just because how many games they get to play. They face Chicago, win that. Nashville, win. They go OT, lose against Dallas, and then they beat San Jose. So extremely easy schedule, all things considered, in regards to Chicago, San Jose. A bit harder with Nashville and Dallas. they took it all of them. Probably got outplayed against Dallas, but still get the point. Just really informed team, like all these top four teams, and it's hard to. It's amazing that they pretty much got the same roster as the last like 5 or so years, and it's completely different.
Yep.
Basically one trade from last year, and that's what's made the difference.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's just insane. Like I hope they keep it up because they're exciting. At number two, I've got, and this is going to be insane because I think that you potentially haven't made the move, but I have the New York Rangers at number two, dropping off just a position.
No, I could not do it.
That's fair. They're your number one. But look, at the end of the day, they're still a stupidly strong team. They get the job done against Toronto 5-2. They lose to Edmonton 3-4, and then they just beat the Buffalo Sabres 4-3 in overtime on the back-to-back. Um, yeah, look, for me, at the end of the day, I think it came down to they've just had a little bit of a slide. They're still performing quite well, still one of the strongest teams in the league, but I think the team at number one has just been lights out lately for me. Anyway, so I made the call. I felt like they deserved it. The Winnipeg Jets.
All
I mean,
right.
they're 8-1-1 on the last 10. Um,
Yeah,
I think
I
that.
just didn't do moves on these top four because they all had a blip here or there, and
Mhm.
that's pretty much it. They all had some sort of blip. They were like 2-1, and so I just couldn't make any moves. But like I agree with you, Winnipeg really is one of the top informed teams, and they are pretty much mainly dominating most of their games recently. But they had the reason why I didn't make the move. They go to OT against Montreal and lose that. They 5-2 Detroit, and then they 5-1 Boston. So two teams that are on the down, and then they OT lose to Montreal. So that's the only reason I didn't make that move.
But they're doing it without Kyle Connor as well. So, for me, it's even more impressive because having someone of that firepower. It was like the Rangers when they were on the run and they had no Fox, and a couple other players out. Like it's just impressive when you've got such star power out, yet you're able to go in night in, night out, and just absolutely dominate. Um, so yeah, look, impressive considering most people were thinking that they were headed for a rebuild, weren't going to be anywhere near the playoffs, were going to regress quite poorly. Potentially, Shifley was going to be on his way out, and all of a sudden, we're talking about them as a potential cup contender. It's insane.
Mm. All right. Let us know what you think of our power rankings. Leave a comment below what your power rankings are. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content. And we also post shorts, so go and check them out as well. But till next time, we'll catch you guys.
Have a Merry Christmas, guys. Take care.
Yes, Merry Christmas.